Here we go with another diagnostic video. This monster was running really well on the track a few weeks ago. Eagles Canyon was perfect weather, perfect surface. New set of Metzler Supermoto tires, and I also had just finished installing the bladder kit on this shock. Video on that to come, and also I got a shock spring specific for my weight, and the difference was incredible. So after setting up the sag and setting up the preload front and rear, this thing is really feeling good. And then halfway through the day it just died. It just came to a stop. I was on the main straight, or on the front straight, getting ready to brake, and the engine died like I had shut off the engine at the kill switch. And I had just filled up the tank of gas with petrol, so I knew it wasn't a fuel issue. So I thought this might be a good opportunity to take a look. Now, I've done a few things. I checked all the electrical connections. Everything is fine. There's nothing electrically wrong. So I thought what we could do is, firstly, double check that it's still not working. So I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little moment where it almost catches. So it sounds like we've got spark, but you know what, we can test that. I've got a couple of test tools. Okay, this little thing is an inductive tester. So let's see. Okay, so it's indicating that the spark plug is firing. Let's see, we could do this. But it sounds like it's almost catching. And these little tools are cheap and easy to get on Amazon. Okay, so we have spark. It's a very handy tool to have if it's really tough to get a spark plug out. Like my nephew's car. Good heavens, it's difficult to get that last spark plug out, so a tool like that really is helpful. Okay, so we know we've got spark. And it sounds like we might have fuel, but let's double check that. So the fuel injector is in there. I'm pretty sure that's... it's one of these. Yeah, okay, so what we'll do is we'll pull the tank off. It's almost off as it is. All right, there's fuel. Now this is a little tiny fuel filter. Actually, I don't think this will work. Yeah, it's too big. Let's check that fuel filter. There's a tiny little bit of crud in there. So there's certainly plenty of gas in the lines. So let's pull the fuel injector out. All right. So the beauty of a single cylinder engine, that's what they refer to as a fuel rail. Okay, so we'll get our little EFI tester. Okay, so you can hear that the injector is cycling when it gets voltage. Let's do this. Okay, that is one fully functional fuel injector. Still got pressure. So we know that the fuel injector and the circuit for it is working. Well, no, we know that the fuel injector is working if it gets a signal. It's just a little piezo switch. If you're ever interested in crystals, do a Google search on piezoelectric crystal. They are fascinating. Okay, so now we have the fuel line installed. The injector is plugged in. So let's see what happens when the injector gets triggered. I'm going to hold it nice and firm because there's some decent pressure coming out of that. No ignition sources anywhere nearby. That's the pump priming. Okay. The injector is doing what we expect. So we've got spark, we've got fuel, if you've got both of those two and you're still not getting in combustion, well, the only thing that's missing is air and compression. And we know we're getting air. There's no problems with that. So we need to establish if we're getting compression. And the interesting thing about that is that normally you can do a compression test. Got a compression tester up there, but this has a compression release to make it easier to start, to make it possible to start. So there's a little lever in the cam that opens up one of the exhaust valves. I believe it's only one, while it's cranking. Otherwise there's too much compression. I think this thing is almost 13-to-1 compression ratio. .75, if I remember correctly. Oh, I did. So we can't do a regular compression test. Just won't work. But we can do a leak down test. And of course, this is all compounded by the fact that this is a 2020 Husqvarna FS450 that I bought on the 30th, I believe, 30th of December 2020. So it's only had 1 year of use, and it has 20 hours. In those 20 hours of use, I have swapped out or rebuilt the shock absorber twice. I've rebuilt the front suspension just the once, I believe it was. I've changed the engine oil roughly 5 times, probably more, because oil is cheap insurance against dirt in the engine. So it's had no shortage of maintenance. Interestingly enough, the valve clearance check is due at 30 hours. But you know what? Why don't we do it right now? Because that could be another contributing factor. So we know we've got spark, we know we've got fuel. Let's take a quick look at the valve clearances. Make sure that there's not a valve stuck while we're here, and see where that takes us. Now, in my previous life as a as a factory trained technician, these got a lot of use. These are my favorite go, no-go gauges. So these have two feeler gauges in one, a small and a thick. Now, I'm going to have to look up the valve clearance specs for this, so I might go and do that and then be right back. So, yeah, I'll be right back. Alrighty then. Back with the official owner's manual. Valve clearance, intake 10 to 15, exhaust 12 to 17. It's pretty easy to remember. 10 to 15, 12 to 17. Now, I've done so many valve clearance adjustment videos on this channel. Hardly seems necessary to explain the process. But just in case, the reason we have variable valve clearances is for when the valve seats actually can deform within the cylinder head, or should I say the cylinder head can deform around the valve seats. So it's actually possible for these poppet valves, as you can see right in there, it's possible for that valve to slowly work its way up in the cylinder head. The Aprilia valve clearance videos show that happening in vivid detail. Okay, so there is the automatic decompression lever. I don't know if you can see the little mechanism in there, but when this first starts spinning slowly, it doesn't quite have enough spring force against the spring to move outwards, but then when it spins at full RPM, this just stays wide open like that. Okay, so what we need to do is position the cam so that none of these rollers are pressing against the lobes. Normally I would move the wheel. I just did an oil change on this thing too. I don't want to waste all that oil. Okay, so I won't open up that lower case. What I'll do is I will lift up the rear wheel. So that's the easiest way to rotate the engine without removing the cover. So we'll put it into top gear and we'll rotate it. So that's the exhaust side, this is the intake valves. go. And that little yellow mark is where top dead center is. Okay. So now we know that the valves are as closed as they will ever be. And okay, so this feeler gauge is 0.10 to 0.15. So this is 0.10, this section is 0.15. Nice and smooth, and it won't fit over the 15. So it is between 10 and 15. And that's the same. Oh, you know what? Look at that. So let's try this another way. Ooh. Yeah, okay. Well, the valve clearance is on the intake is more than 0.15. Intake between 0.1 and 0.15. So this is too big. Okay, well, there we go. The valve clearance is too big. All right, and let's see if this one will fit. This is 12 to 17. 12, 17 does not. 12 fits, 17 does not, so it's less than 17. It's a little vague. Okay, so there's a 0.13 millimeter. Yep, that fits easily. So that's at least a 14. Oh, hang on. So we know 4, 5, 13, 15 and 20. Anyway, so it's less than 17. And the exhaust, 12 to 17. Yep. Okay, that's spot on. And that's spot on. 12 fits, 17 does not. Okay, so this one needs to be adjusted. I'm going to double check that one more time. Ten to 15. Yep, 15 fits. 4 to 6. 5 to 7. Okay, 5 fits, 7 does not, so it's 6/1000ths of an inch. Just to make things more confusing. So it's exactly 0.15-ish. Yeah, okay, it's exactly 0.152. Okay, so that's not going to prevent it from running though. So we know that the valves are healthy. We know, for example, that this isn't just jammed shut, or in this case open. So it's not failing to run because the decomp is locked in the wrong position, as can happen. Cam chain is fine. Valves are fine. Okay, so now what we can do, before I pull that cam out for a valve clearance adjustment, let's do this little test. We will check the valve seal. We're going to check the seal of the valves on the exhaust and the intake and the piston itself. Because as I mentioned, a compression test is kind of useless with that automatic decompressor. Oh, yeah. You can do this too. We know that the fuel injector is working just fine. We tested the spark with a spark tester, but let's take a look at the spark. Oh yeah, that's a nice healthy spark. All right, let's do this. Leak down. That won't fit. I remember doing this on another KTM, and that one wouldn't fit, but this one does. Okay, so we got to make sure it's top dead center again. Okay, so we know that there's no pressure on the valve springs from the cams followers. There's a tiny little bit of free play there, tiny little bit of free play there. So those valves are sealing as well as they possibly can right now. We've got 90 psi of air coming in here. So we're going to pump it into the combustion chamber and see what the leakage gauge says, and also see if we can hear if it's leaking. Okay, moderate. Definitely not good. Okay, I can hear that straight away. Yep. We have leaky exhaust valves. Because I wonder if we had leaky rings, you hear or feel something there. That's nothing. So it's not pushing past the rings. And there's nothing coming out of the airbox. Wow, okay. Got a problem with an exhaust valve.